Hello, Hopkinton. Welcome to the Hopkinton Hangout Hour. I'm Mike Terosian, your host, and today, Monday, January 25th. I almost said February. I'm dying for it to be February for some reason, but today it's January 25th, and one of my favorite Monday shows is the Chief Update, and our favorite police chief, Chief Joe Bennett. How are we doing, Joe?
I'm doing great today on this fine Monday.
I know. Isn't it a wonderful day? I mean, I just wish the wind would stop a little bit, and it'd be kind of perfect. You see how much the flag's blowing behind me right now?
I know, I can see
But-
it. But it looks really nice through my window.
It does. It really does. And we'll work on some better backgrounds for you. I got this great green screen that hooks the back of your chair. No one would ever know the difference.
Okay, great. You put me up in the mountain. I
Yeah.
hear that the Swiss, the alpine skiing, your alpine skiing show is really popular. I'll put one of the images from on that show.
Yeah, we'll have the kids whipping down the hill right behind you. You can do that. That's easy. But Chief, thanks again for coming on and give us all the update. And I know some of the newest news is Hopkinton Police took part in the inauguration, huh?
We did. We're really proud of Officer Nate Wright. He's a member of the services, and he went up to Washington to help secure the inauguration. I met with him today, and he said that it all went really well, and that they were treated well and taken care of and fed well, and all in all, he was pleased. He said he saw very few protesters, none that caused any problems.
So no glimpses of Trump leaving or anything like that. You didn't get to.
He did show me President or ex-President Trump helicopter leaving, or he was still the president then, and the helicopter flying out to get on the plane and go to Florida.
Joint Base Andrews. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I tell you, isn't that incredible to be proud of? Something big. I mean, the changing of presidents, and you're there, and how iconic something like that is, and being there at the right time. And one of my favorite stories about the Washington D.C. is when the middle school used to go, and of course, my oldest Stephanie was the first one to go in the family, and when she was in Washington, what was the big event that she got to witness was Ronald Reagan's funeral. Amazing,
it must have been quite a ceremony.
Streets are filled, it's just incredible. And she never knew Reagan, she wasn't alive, and just to take it all in, it's something else. And I mean, Washington, it is our capital. So much has happened there, and just to be a part of it, it was great. The whole event, the whole day. Granted, I get to watch it from, like you on the TV set or something, but it was a lot more than Bernie Sanders' mittens at that day,
No, it went really well. I thought J-Lo's singing was great. The national anthem.
Lady Gaga was amazing. Garth Brooks. Just a great day. So I also heard that you had some visitors by your station here in the shape of Girl Scouts, and they came by to thank you.
The Girl Scouts over the years have always been so good, supportive of us, and they treat us so well. And they're just another example of the kindness, caring, and generosity of the community. But I'm sure everybody that was here at the time enjoyed seeing them.
Oh yeah, it's so nice when they just stop in just to say hello.
Yeah.
They're not looking for a tour. They're not looking to earn a badge. They just come in and just give you the big thank you. Those are huge.
Well, we do look forward to starting the tours up when we get through this.
Oh my goodness, I know. It's awful. I still get overload of boxes of plastic fire helmets at my station because we don't get to give them out anymore.
Yeah. We'll get through it. We'll get there.
Right. So let's see. You had a couple of new officers start, and are they all done with their street training now?
Yep, they're both on the road. We have three newer officers. We have Brody Normandin, Brittany Firth, and Nate Wright. They're all out on the road and working. And so from everything I'm hearing, they're doing a great job. And they're a good fit for the organization too. And I trust as the community gets to know them, they'll fit right in.
Oh, absolutely. And they all were they there beforehand? I know, of course, Brittany being a dispatcher before I stole it from you.
Yeah.
Uh, and then she comes back.
That's okay. We'll just train her and then you take her.
Yeah, take him again. Sure.
She did a great job in communications, and I'm sure she'll do a great job here. We're glad to have her back in our building.
Right.
She was always part of our family, but even when she headed east for a little while, but we're glad to have her back.
Yeah, she just needed a little fixing, just a little tweaking.
Yeah.
That's it.
Thank you, Mike.
So, now, and you said in Nate South, where did he come from?
Nate.
What was his background before he joined Hopkinton? Do you remember?
Well, I know he's in the military and has been deployed to Egypt. I don't. I'm drawing a blank right now. I'm mixing them together, and I don't want to mix them up.
I know there's so many new faces, Joe. I go by, I pass every cruise, I give a wave. It's like I have no idea who that was, but the hands going up because if it was Scott, if it was Matt, or they get mad if I didn't wave. But these kids here, half of them, I don't know them, and
Well,
it's awesome. And I tell you, they look great out of the community. I love seeing them when they have to interact. You just see them out on the street near, whether it's downtown near the coffee shop or out by the school, and not just your school resource. I'm talking your regular offices. It's just so cool, the presence and how people just love going up and talking to them.
Yeah, and they do a great job out there. I get phone calls and emails and praise all the time for the way that they just carry themselves and the way they're engaging and the way they're approachable. And that begins with the selection. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for someone that's a good fit in our community and a good fit in our department. And that's a basic tenet of it, is being approachable and friendly. We're not hiring gunfighters or warriors, right? We're hiring guardians.
Well, it's nice to know that they can do that part of the job when needed. But yes,
They're very good at it.
that's not the first thing you look for.
No, we have a lot of really good tactically strong people, and a lot of really good athletes. So
yeah, well, here's the other thing. I noticed how athletic they were because, I remember a few of the back in the older days. I mean, the athleticism wasn't number one priority, but these guys here, they're always big and ready to go. And but your regular officers aren't just law enforcement smart anymore. There's a lot more to being an officer than just knowing what ticket to write, what charges to write, or whatever. There's a lot more involved. I mean, more psychiatry involved, more social working involved, and so forth. Can you explain what some of the backgrounds and kind of degrees that officers now carry?
Sure. Most of our officers have studied some form of criminal justice, but within those programs, they do look at serving various portions of the population. They do learn about diversity, and they continue to learn when they come out. Almost all of our officers have a degree. Most of them have a bachelor's or above. And once they come out, we continue to train. Thanks to Human Resources Director Maria Casey, we did 2 hours. Everybody in most of the town employees did 2 hours of diversity training. But our industry is great at continuing ed. I had the number in front of me. I think we did over 3,000 hours of continuing ed last year within the department. And that you have to support that. That's the thing. It's my job to advocate to get those funds, to get them the diverse training, get them exposed to different thinkers, and different people. So, but it really helps because, the more you know, right, the more types of incidents you can respond to, and the more types of people that you can really care for and take care of, and it goes to safety. If they can, using their skills and their knowledge, de-escalate a situation or calm a situation down, it goes a long way towards avoiding having to use any type of physical force.
Right. It's nice too because you're now making it a friendlier situation when, because let's face it, when police show up, it's not everyone's best day, but it's not also going to be their worst day, because they're looking for ways to help you and not just arrest you. It's not a scary visit when the blue cars pull up.
Sure. One of the things that we train in is verbal judo, and that's a process of working through an encounter with a citizen. But the really basic underlying theme is a lot of people in crisis just want to be heard. They need, if you give them a moment, just say their say. You don't have to necessarily agree with them, and you may never agree with them, but at least you've shown them respect of listening first. And that's the beginning of de-escalation, is sizing the situation up.
So Chief, welcome. And Mike, thank you so much for being here when I was delayed by a few minutes. It's a very interesting conversation. In fact, I want to pick up on the last thing that you just said, Chief, when you talk about de-escalating and you talk about people needing to be heard and wanting to be heard, and that is the first step. I'm wondering, from your position, not in Hopkinton, but what you think about what's happening with the unrest around the country over certain things. What do you think is going wrong that they're having serious problems like this?
So now the public knows that we don't script any of this conversation, because I would cross that question right off the question.
Oh, really?
I'm not going to judge how people handle protests or give recommendations to other departments, but I think it's pretty obvious for everybody to see the temperature is high in the country, all around the country, and you see people just angry about so many different things. And when you have people that are angry, it doesn't take much to spark the powder keg. When you have people standing, screaming at officers, and you have officers holding a line, it's tenuous. Things can deteriorate really fast. And then once they do, you get all those horrible images that we see. No police officer wants to be hitting people with batons and shooting pepper balls at them. That's the last type of work that they're looking to do. Well, I'm not saying no police officer, out of hundreds of thousands, there's probably some that really enjoy it, but most don't.
So now let me just correct myself if I came across incorrectly. I wasn't looking for, like judgment or saying where people are wrong or right. I was just thinking that, in the conversations that we have, you bring in so many other aspects of policing that typically do not get spoken about, with the people that you have on your staff that are trained social workers and all the other programs and stuff like that. I was just kind of thinking about a lot about what you were saying, right? Not about one side being right or wrong, but what happens to get us to a flashpoint, and if you could speak into the wider community, what that kind of things would you say that you would hope that both sides could listen to and help to diffuse what turns into a difficult situation?
Sure. So, the biggest thing, like what started this conversation, is letting people be heard. And that's one thing about our community, is the boards, committees, and departments and the community are very open-minded to listening to other people's position. We saw that over the summer with different rallies taking place at the same time within hundreds of yards of each other, and there was no conflict. They're very open to listening. I was at a meeting years ago where some white supremacists came in to a planning meeting, and they spewed hate for 10 minutes. We knew they were coming, or whatever the allotted amount was, 9 minutes. We had intel on it. We had undercover trooper intel. We were present. The community decided to let them come in and give their 9 minutes, and they did that, and they left. And I saw residents there saying that were outraged and were going to get up and leave. And I saw a profound woman say to her husband, "Why would we let him drive us out?" we'll sit here and listen, and you can listen to us as well. I thought that was, I mean, I was like on the job like 5 years at that time. I still think about that. It still comes right to the front of the mind. I think we just need to give each other the opportunity to listen, I guess, and be and respect each other's, at least their opinion, that they're entitled to an opinion.
I think that's real. I think that's, really important, and oftentimes gets lost in the conversation, where one side of any debate, discussion, argument begins to demonize the other side. And then, it's hard to come back from that. It's hard to deal with them. It's hard for people to deal with each other when they start from a point that, there's only one right. There's only one view.
Right. And then if you get into my job and just dealing with people on the street, ideally we're standing there armed and protected and have all the authority and power, right, over most situations. But by listening, it de-escalates it. We could drive them down like may have been done in the past, the legendary past of the 50s, 60s, and 70s under the professional police model, with Dragnets as to, I forget the guy's name, but that's the show. He's interviewing a victim, and he says to her, "Just the facts, man." Like,
yes. Joe, it's Joe somebody. Joe
Friday?
Sargent, I think.
Friday, maybe.
Oh, it's Jack Webb was the actor.
Jack Webb, yep.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
we don't, that's a professional policing model that's been dead for years, but, it works if you let people voice at least speak their mind, I guess.
Right. So I wonder if you could talk to me about where the circles of your spheres come up with this concept. And what I mean by that is you have one circle of influence, which is Hopkinton, over which you are the chief of police. And then I would imagine there's another circle, which is kind of like Massachusetts. And then there's another circle, which is kind of like, not the collaboration, but the grouping of all type of law enforcement across country, which varies greatly.
Sure.
When you talk about what we do here in Hopkinton, it's some really forward-thinking, really open and understanding philosophies that you're putting into place. I'm just curious what types of things you see going on in those outer spheres. What type of conversations, what types of programming is happening to help support police officers, and what kind of knowledge they're being exposed to?
Sure. So I participate in Middlesex County Police Chief, the Massachusetts Police Chiefs Association, and the International Chiefs of Police Association. So I do get exposed to a lot. And those associations are fantastic about letting even a small town Hopkinton chief join the conversation and participate. What I see locally is right in, say, the Middlesex County area, many of the police departments are functioning at a very high level, like our department is. They're well funded, well supported, and well trained. There are pockets that aren't, and I do spend some time meeting with. We'll have group meetings with 5 or 6 chiefs, and myself and another chief will talk about the jail diversion program. We'll talk about another program that we're doing that's been put together by either advocates in the jail diversion program or by other chiefs who have reached out and said, "Hey, can we meet with you guys?" And I see that going on. I have seen models in other states where they have, for instance, full-time jail diversion clinics, jail diversion clinicians, 24/7. I mean, that would be amazing, but it comes with a price tag, right? Ours costs $5,000, 24/7 staffing, including days off and vacation time and everything would, that's a bit, you'd be creating a whole department.
Right.
So I do see pockets all around the country where some great things like that are being done. But I think I'll brag, I'll say that, the Northeast really leads the way in law enforcement today, as far as interacting with the community.
I agree. Well, actually, I can't say I agree with that because I don't know anything else. I just know the towns that I interact with, there is an openness and a willingness to discuss. And in my town, one of my kids, wrote a letter to the police chief, and the police chief wrote back very graciously, happy to meet with you at any time and talk about what we do and talk about what can go on. And, quite often when you're speaking, Chief, it's not about law enforcement. It is about, jail diversion. It is about mediation. It is about listening to people. And it really seems to me that is actually, you know what? It really seems to me that is different than what you would refer to the traditional model of policing, where it's like, we are here to keep the peace. So here we are, right? It's a much more engagement type of thing.
Well, I can add to that, but
Yeah.
I'm able to be at that level because I don't have to worry about being out on the street and working calls. We have good, strong, good, highly skilled officers with good equipment. They work very cohesively, strong command staff. So I'm not like, if we have a series of house breaks, odds are that if the person comes to Hopkinton, if it's going around, we're going to catch them. I don't have to be down there saying, what are we going to do? Because the surrounding towns are getting broken into. They allow me that time to take a step back and work at my level, which is great, especially considering how new the department is. We have 15 employees with 15 officers in patrol with 5 or fewer years.
Right.
They say 5 years because one of them has an anniversary in a couple of weeks. Most of them have 4 or fewer years. Yeah.
All right. So good. So I got another question out of that, but the first question I have is, how have you seen and how recently has things started to shift from what we would call the old style, stature of the police to what you're talking about now? How has that evolved and how long has that taken to this point?
So it started with the now controversial concept of broken windows and community policing. And the founder of it is I don't want to say Trujillo once, but from a book he wrote. And so when around the early 90s, don't tell anybody, when I came in, that was big. Community policing was everything. That's everything everybody talked about. And it was 2 parts. It was community engagement with the purpose of building a trust that would allow the community to work with us. So prior to that, they had public relations, which was giving out stickers and running ads and doing this. But the real drive, what was different about community policing was that it really wanted to build a working relationship, an actual working relationship that resulted in people feeling forward, having trust to come forward with information to help solve problems in their neighborhoods. So it's been a while, since the 90s that it's been around, but it takes a long time to get first to earn trust. And then the second hardest phase that we went through, in my opinion, is that a lot of departments did a lot of PR and didn't really push back on the community to say, if you want help, you got to help me, And but I think over time it really settled in. There is some controversy around it because the broken windows theory, one of the concepts of it targets quality of life issues. So in the cities, public drinking, vandalism, a lot of low misdemeanors. So there is some controversy around that, but the overall concept of community policing, I feel it works. And you could look at our traffic tickets and our charges. We're not big on overcharging people at all. In fact, we don't.
So, 2 interesting points from that. First off is, I'm curious, who sets the direction and tone when you as the police chief are going to focus resources on jail diversion, on community policing? Is that something that is in your wheelhouse that you come up with? Is there any other type of, select board or other group in town that you work with, or is this kind of your job coming up with that?
Well, I will say it's my responsibility, but a lot goes into it. I have, we're always seeking feedback from whether it's a community survey or through community engagement and finding out what the community has set as priorities. We just did a huge one as part of our strategic initiative. I meet regularly with boards from the different departments and the senior leaders, and they help give me feedback on things that are going on and direction. So although I'm responsible, I don't do it alone. And my command staff and the officers really, they're sharp. They're always looking for ways to innovate. And so it really does, it comes from all around me, but it is ultimately my responsibility. I can't abrogate that or if
Okay.
it goes wrong,
So
if it goes wrong, it's on me.
Okay. All right. So, so when you are looking at that, when you are in your office and you're considering the future, not just of the Hopkinton PD, but of Hopkinton, of the community that you want to, support and encourage and keep safe. What types of things are you excited about and looking forward to in your role as our chief?
So the biggest thing that I'm excited about is getting back into the community. It's always been one of my favorite parts of the job is interacting with the community, and COVID has really dampened that. We do have a strategic initiative on community engagement, and we're really looking forward to getting out, having events, attending events, neighborhood meetings, and we're still working to do those virtually, but it's tough to make a connection. And then the other byproduct I'm looking to really really welcoming is the ability for a younger person to stand next to a fully dressed officer in uniform in a setting other than the schools. Luckily, we had that school setting, because that does go a long way to really show who we are. There's a lot of images on TV that are negative. There's a lot of, this isn't a great time to be a cop right now. There's plenty of, I don't know, disdain or hatred for law enforcement right now. And we're gonna have to rebuild the trust with some people that haven't been around us for the last year, or maybe never had an encounter with us. And I think that's our highest priority, is ensuring that we gain that trust and protect it.
So this may be also another question that you would just X off, which is totally fine. But I'm just curious, in your department, in our town of Hopkinton, have you struggled with that within our community?
Not me personally, but our officers have.
Okay. And I think that I really struggle with that type of thing, because there's always this concept of uncomfortable conversations and, breaking through barriers and stuff like that. And I am curious to do that, because I think that is a way forward. However, I do recognize that, some people will go on a game show and risk, looking like they don't know the answer to a national audience. But when you come down to your community, they're like, oh, I don't want, my neighbors are going to be watching this. So I do think that publicly it's a difficult conversation to have. And I also think that for a police department, you have another barrier to that, which is you are always called when things are in trouble, when things are going wrong. And so, you always have a facet of what you do that is part of those situations. And so it seems to me like the struggle is to not let that overcome everything else that you do and are trying to be in our community.
And that's why it's such a challenging job from the day you sign up, right? You never know what you're going to do next. You never know what the next minute brings. And even these conversations here, let's be honest, Jim, I could misspeak, and the whole community could be looking for me to leave, right? But that's what the community needs. They need to see me. The men and women are out there every day. and I need to be out there as well. It would be safer for me to avoid every appearance, every question, every conversation, but that's not who we are. We're open, transparent, and honest.
And you know what? I think that is a profound statement because, when I think back over the years, there have been a couple situations that were really tragic in our community. And, there was scary stuff going on and we didn't know what was going to happen. And I'm not going to detail them, but the fact is that type of stuff can happen anywhere. And, like protests and argumentation that gets out of hand can happen anywhere. A lot of times, Hopkinton is such a great place to live. We don't see a lot of that. So it can be it can be like you get used to it and you don't think that something like that could happen, and I mean, I do think that it is a factor of today's culture in today's world that if you do misspeak, like honestly, just misspeak, that could have profound consequences because you and your team are so upfront and out there in all of these things.
Yep.
So you had mentioned earlier that you're the chief and you have your officers who are out there in the field and who are interacting with this type of stuff. So I'm curious, like, what do you do? Because when I talk to you, you have a clear knowledge and an understanding. What do you do to provide that type of knowledge or training for your officers? What kind of programming do you guys do?
Yeah, so it begins like we've talked about in the past. It begins in the interview room where we start laying out the expectations by what the questions we ask. And then it begins with the sergeants, the FTOs, taking them to calls and showing them the HPD way. And then as they leave the FTO program, the sergeants are on the calls with them and showing them the way. And it just continues. Probably for me, the most impactful thing that I got here from my best leaders was when a leader walks up to you afterwards and says, hey, you did nice on that call, but what I really liked about it was the way you spoke to the person or the way you de-escalated. And that's a teaching moment in the moment. And I think that's the greatest way to build a culture, because you can remember that, like, okay, that's what we are, so it's formal and then there's informal. But for me,
Yeah.
What really drove me to it was when a person I really respected gave me a compliment on a very specific action that I had taken or the way I handled a conversation. For me, that was always the most powerful.
Right. So there was a comment that we got here where a person says that they believe that officers get special training to help people with autism. And I was wanting to speak about it because you know what? If somebody had asked me that, it would never cross my mind that, like that you would have that specialized training. And so if you could talk about that type of training you get, and also any other kind of training that I personally wouldn't think about that you people would have.
Sure. I mean, the autism training is outstanding, and all the instructors are people who it's near and dear to their heart, where they have a loved one that is autistic, and then they get the national training, and then they go out and deliver it. You might have a 17-year-old autistic male who's 6'4", and we've had them autistic members of the community go into a bathroom with a knife. Okay, what are we gonna do? We're gonna storm the door? No, so you sit back. But with the class teaches a lot of things that you might not know about, say, touch sensitivity, how they don't want to be touched, or sound sensitivity, or proximity. Some of these things trigger people with autism. Many autistic people are sensitive to sound. So controlling the environment, offering separation, listening, identifying triggers by talking with the parents. One of the things we have here is a program that we started years ago. It's called a person at risk. And if you have someone who might be autistic or maybe has Alzheimer's, which is another topic we study, or any person that might be of risk in any way, people with autism and Alzheimer's both elope, right? Which means they leave their home when people might not know. And we do find people wandering the street at night, and that can be very dangerous, especially in New England in the winter. So we offer this program where family members can sign up. It's all confidential, but it gives the patrol officer in the field. There's a series of questions like, are they touch sensitive, sound sensitive? Do they have favorite places? So some may be attracted to water or like to go to the train station or will walk to a relative's house. And then it also offers a picture. In Hopkinton, you can, in the middle of the night, you're really looking for the person, right? There is a person right now walking on Grove Street at 3 a.m, but the picture's helpful. It is, because sometimes they end up, maybe down at on West Main Street at a busy place.
Yeah.
So that program helps us, but it is that diversity and training that really helps us. That opens your mind, right?
Right.
It also adds empathy. The more exposure you have, and I don't want to talk to Seymour Coley's book that I read, A Resident in Town. Exposure to diversity brings empathy, and I agree with. I couldn't agree with him more.
Right. So this type of training that your officers have for dealing with people with autism or dealing with people with Alzheimer's, is this offered, or is it required as part of the routine of the Hopkinton Way?
Well, yes. So that would be a required training program that would be moved down through everyone. We have a core set of, we look at rank and assignment, and each rank and assignment has a structured required list of trainings. And then we have an optional required trainings, because some things don't come up all the time, depending on, funding around the area. Our vendors might not offer it all the time. The training councils, that is our state agency that funds training, are very underfunded. They barely can push out police academies and in-service. Specialty, they can't do any specialty trainings really. They just don't have the money. We had worked through that. The chiefs had worked through that and got some legislature passed that allowed for $5 off of every vehicle rental, which sounded like a great idea unless you're heading into a pandemic. But the Mass Police is still working to get it funded, and even under the police reform, they will stay. That training agency is still the training agency. So hopefully they get the funding, especially as we hopefully add some new training. We already have diversity training and implicit bias, racial profiling. A lot of things that are called for in the police reform are already in place. But you got to fund those things, and you got to pay instructors to go out and teach them, and you have to pay officers overtime because they work the midnight shift. And if you want to send them today, you got to pay them. But that's training. I truly, that autism training I really enjoyed it, and the instructor was so passionate and vibrant that the day flew by.
Yeah. Now, does your budget support training, or is it supported by what is able to be funded through the state?
So the two items in my budget, excuse me, I admit I can't see that.
Okay, we understand you're at work.
So I do have line items in my budget. I have a line item that's called training, and that's to pay instructors. So when I send someone to the police academy and I have to pay for it, I use that line item. Or if I bring in a vendor, like I did for implicit bias and de-escalation, I pay them out of that. Or if I send someone to a program. One of our vendors is Roger Williams University, and they put on some fantastic programs. We train our leadership down there, and we train our FTOs down there. And that would be another thing. And then within my overtime budget, I have a chunk allocated for training to pay the officers.
Mm-hmm.
Both. And it's budget season. And budgets are tight this year, but I'm going to do everything I can to fight to keep those budgets funded. So
yeah. So just a quick aside, because I haven't gone through this training, but I've read a fair amount, a little bit, about implicit bias, and it seems like a really difficult concept when you have a bias that you're not even aware of that you have. And so I'm just curious, like, you've been through that training.
Mhm.
Is that like a really, is that a hard course? Is that a hard course?
It is. I mean, it does. My basic takeaway from it was we all have bias. I mean, it goes back to survival, right?
Yep.
Trying to look for, scan in the environment for things that might be a threat to you, right? At the primal level. But we all carry bias, right? And I said this in a meeting, so it's already documented. You know, the most evil people, Jim, that I have ever met in my life, murderers and
Mhm.
evil people that have done horrible things to children, they look like us.
Yeah.
They're white, middle America, and from an affluent town. That's so, you know, like, this job teaches you that any person on the wrong day can do the most horrible things. And
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I have thought that when, you go online and you read stories about serial killers and Timothy McVeigh, and, and I look at those pictures and I say, if I didn't know how, you just can't tell by what a person looks like, what's going on inside their head.
yeah, there's a whole series. I think it's a British series called Handsome Killers.
Mm.
And
Okay.
our detectives are on it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to give him any more notoriety by mentioning his name, but he was certainly the victim of that.
Yeah.
Some extremely charismatic,
Yeah. I'll tell you, what, you just mentioned something that I find really interesting. Many times when something happens, and the media covers it and it gets very well publicized, oftentimes they will talk about, oh, this is how they caught these people, or this is like what they're doing to track them. And I often wonder, and I wonder if you think the same thing or think something different, that, boy, maybe if we didn't publicize so much, your techniques for catching the bad guys, it might be easier, because then the next bad guy would make the same mistake rather than learning, uncovering how you go about your job.
Sure. I mean, if you go back decades to fingerprints, right? The first thing all the bad guys did is stop wearing gloves, right?
Yeah.
And now they know other techniques, so they're not leaving DNA behind. One of the best DNA cases we have is Pat O'Brien. As a detective, we unfortunately there was a serial rapist that came to town and went into a home and was fended off by the victim, the intended victim. Very proud for her. Good job. And we lifted one fingerprint and took DNA from the fingerprint. And later on, they found him down in New Jersey off of a DNA match.
Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty cool policing right there. That's some science.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. And from there down to New Jersey, that's amazing. That's amazing. When, I think that there's a lot of really cool collaboration that goes on.
But if you've been wearing a glove, right? Then
yeah.
We would have got nothing. And the crime scenes now take so long to process. When you're thinking DNA, it's,
Right.
It's not like you spread some powder around, flash the light on it, put some tape on it, and you're done.
Yeah, exactly.
Lift a print.
All right. You ready for something completely different?
We're pivoting?
Yes, we're pivoting.
Okay.
I'm curious. I haven't been inside the walls of the police department for a couple of years. Yep. And I remember when that place was built, there was a big wing that had not been finished.
I don't know what you're talking about.
No, I was wondering, right? It was for future expansion. It was for like when you filled out your programs and stuff. So is the building 100% utilized now, or do you still have room for growth?
No, so there's still room for growth. Over the last year, we contracted the fire department and communications and police department worked together on a public safety building study where they looked at growth projections, each department and the future needs. And that program released a study that revealed that the building was built appropriately when need be, was as we grow that facility will serve us. There might be some modifications given standards for locker rooms that have changed, as times go on. And but for the most part, I was not surprised to see that the report showed that we're on target for our full build out, and that space will afford it, will fit the needs. So that was good to hear. Considering I don't want to have to go ask for 25 million.
No, it's a beautiful building. And one of the things I love that you put that camera outside so people can come up and, meet somebody that they're selling something to on Craigslist and know that it's being recorded. That's like a really cool thing.
Yeah. Safe exchange place. Yep.
Yes. Yeah.
That's
now, how is your department growing as the town is growing?
Yes. So there's been a planned growth. Almost every year we added one additional officer en route to our goal to maintain the service level relative to the population. We did get an expansion position this year, and I'm putting in for an additional one. And we have a couple openings right now we're going to fill, and we'll get everything filled and work on filling that expansion position if the town awards it. I know I'm not trying to pitch my position right now, but we continue to need to grow the department.
Right. And does each officer come with a patrol cruiser?
No, they share cruisers.
Okay.
They share cruisers, and the cruisers are on a rotation cycle, which is good. We actually probably 10 years ago got to a point where we could actually park the car and let it sit, and officers were assigned to a car. So that was really helpful with COVID. We have a rotation of officers sharing the same car, and then when they go on their days off, that car is there. But that also offers us the ability. Cars go down all the time. We're always working on them and having to set them for maintenance, and
right.
So because that car is down, it can be brought back online for an officer to drive in a temporary basis.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I would. I don't know if you know if this is part of what you think about. I'm just curious. How long does a cruiser last? I assume it gets a lot of miles on it.
Yeah. So there's the mileage, and then there's the hours. For every mile, there's 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
So we try to get rid of them way before 100. Ideally, for a frontline car we want to get it offline before 80, because that's when it gets expensive to maintain them. When they come out of warranty and they're getting old and they stop breaking. Some cars, say the sergeant's car, typically becomes something else. Like, for instance, Phil Power's car got totaled, and we're looking for a car. Well, we usually, and the detectives, they'll take a car that's lightly used, or the car I drive will get passed to the detectives. Some cars get repurposed, but the frontline cars, the troops out there, those cars are almost worthless when we're done with them. We used to get like $1,500 for them. But to give credit to, there you go. To give credit to Ben Sweeney, he's found a way where we're auctioning off for much more money than you would even imagine that someone would pay for him. I don't know how he gets so much.
No kidding.
So when we're done with them, they're empty. Their seats are gone, right? Because the center console's out, the back seat is out because there was a prisoner cage back there. They're just a mess, and they're driven hard.
Yeah. Now I'm sure your officers and yourself must go through some type of car training. Like for me, this is just a civilian side. This past year, I went through the In Control crash prevention training, where they show you how to control a car when you're like stomp on the brake and you're skidding, and it was really, really interesting. I'm guessing you guys must take a pretty serious version of that.
Sure. Did you do the gate where you're driving along and you have to go left or right? Did you
Yes.
do that?
And you have, yes. And it's amazing because you can still steer and drive that car when you're skidding.
Yeah.
That was the one. It's so interesting you mentioned that. That was the one where I was like, this is not going to work. And it did.
The quick, when you, like, it's a lane change. It's essentially a lane change where you just go like,
Yeah.
how about the driving off the road with one tire goes down into the gully? Did you do the recover?
No, I didn't get that one.
That's a good one to learn because that's scary when that happens.
That's, that's the most thought-provoking one was the one where you're going along with somebody and then they flash the light and you have to stop immediately. And it shows you how long it takes you to see and then stomp on the brake that you would plow right through that car in front of you.
Right. And you know, the thing that for older people, especially anybody that drove cars before anti-lock brakes, the hardest thing to train for is to use the anti-lock brakes. Like if it comes to time to stop an emergency, just stomp that brake and the car will do the work. And you're amazed how fast it stops. And you can steer because the tires are still rotating, every a second. They're moving a little bit. So you still have the ability to steer. It's not like the old day where you lock the brakes on and you just slide sideways into something.
It looks good on TV.
Yeah, you had to do threshold braking or pumping the brake.
Yep. Yep. I remember those days.
But cars have come so far, and we see it in car accidents. When I started, we're trained EMTs. We actually worked as EMTs. We would work the jaws of life and cut people out of cars and lift the dashboard off their legs. Mike's ready to talk now, and you don't see that on the surface roads like you used to. Right.
Now, do you is that like a one and done training, or is there like a schedule of reinforcement trainings for that type of thing?
So the emergency vehicle operations course is on a reoccurring cycle. So everybody gets in the police academy, and then we try to send everybody down at the military base down on the Cape every 2 to 3 years.
Okay. Mike?
Yeah, we're real fortunate to have that training right here in town at the old Liberty Mutual.
Yeah.
That's where I went like 2-3 times, and we went like every 3 years and so forth. Ricky Flannery was the big one that used to tie all of us in together with that.
Yeah, and when the fire was able to go down there with the ambulance.
The truck,
Or the truck and do the course.
I tell you, when they got rid of those anti-lock brakes and all the things that would happen, it was crazy. If I'm going off the road with into the gutter and so forth, it was bad. But it was so much fun, and you couldn't believe how calmly the instructor was. Unlike my very first licensed instructor when I was 16, but very calmly he was, no, just do that a little bit more, and I think I'm gonna die. But he says, oh no, just a little, and you can't believe how much control you have if you do it right. If you just step on the brake and leave it down, leave your foot down. It's unreal.
Yeah,
so the gate. So for the listeners, the gate is a scenario where you have a line of cones in front of you, and you bring the car up to what they've determined is the failure speed that you can't pass. Like if you go 1 mile an hour over, you can't pass it. You can't pass this test. And the instructor sits there, and you have 2 coned out roads on the side. And at the last second, the instructor says, right. And you have to change lanes, slam the brakes on, change lanes, and get into that other lane or gate. And when they brought in anti-lock brakes, the speed went from being like 32 to like 56 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. and that's in a truck, because with the ambulance, they also had their truck it was a special truck that they could just connect the anti-lock. So you could actually see the difference. You try it once with, try it once without, and actually see the difference. And it's incredible. The speed's almost doubled with the anti-lock braking to do that.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we're coming up to the end of our time. I got a couple other quick things I'd like to ask Chief. A question came in asking if you're still taking back drugs and needles during this pandemic.
Absolutely. So our concerns about the opioid epidemic has not gone away. We did have to shut it down for a while, but now we better understand how to work with touch points and keep it safe here. So It still is a police station. I would recommend that the second you walk back out that door, wash your hands, and but bring it in, please. The needles go in the needle box. The drugs go in the drug box. That's a big thing, and they're all well labeled, but they're open 24/7, and we'll be happy to get rid of them. I think we got rid of 500 pounds of unwanted drugs last year, and the needle box, the needle thing gets emptied every month or 6 weeks.
Wow.
There is
Okay.
something we need.
And the other question, someone was asking, what are the new scams that are being reported? I'm just curious because you know what? It seems like that's a perennial situation. So you know, like scams is becoming so big.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep. I think the best thing I can speak to about that is there's so many of them, and kept asking me off the cuff. Nothing really is coming to mind. You know, we obviously
Okay.
have unemployment fraud, the grandparent fraud, all of them. But the
Yeah.
big thing is they all have the same common things. There's an urgency to act. Like,
Yeah.
you got to do this now. Your grandson's being held, and we're not letting him go until you send the money in, or you know, there's a warrant for your arrest, and the police are going to come. There's always an urgency, and there's always a non-conventional payment method.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's a debit card or Western Union, which I wouldn't even know how to do that. You know,
Yeah.
don't panic.
So,
And if you are worried and you're thinking of doing it, call us. Call
Yeah.
us. We're here. We'll get you on the phone with someone, and 99 out of 99. It's like Ivy Snow. 99.9 out of 100. It's going to be a scam.
So this is interesting because I was a couple of months ago, I was reading an article about this in Reader's Digest, and there was a woman who was a little bit older, and she ended up giving a scammer like $50,000, and she knew halfway through that this was wrong and that she was being scammed, but she was too embarrassed to talk about it with her family or with the police department to try to get some help. So I'm wondering, you know, this has been talked about a lot. Are you seeing a lot more of, you know, the community coming forward and asking for help because they're aware that this is out there?
Yes. I mean, our numbers are through the roof on fraud attempts and unfortunately on fraud success.
Mm.
But speaking to that, you know, the stigma, it's just like with opioids. It's the same concept where people don't come forward for help because they're afraid of what people might think.
Yeah.
We're past that. Those times are gone, you know.
Mhm.
Anybody that doesn't know that both people have substance abuse problems and that people get victimized, you need to, I guess, pick up a paper or go online or something. You're not going to be judged by us, and you're not going to be judged by your family. And if they do, then shame on them.
You know what? I love that. I love that because so much heartache in life could be avoided if people just heard your words and just knew that it's not shameful. It's not a failure. You know, it's just, this is what, you know, bad people do. So I'm really glad that you said that. Thank you. And now I am afraid that is the end of our time. I have so much enjoyed spending this hour with you, and thank you for coming on and talking about all the stuff that you guys think about, do for our community.
It's my pleasure. Looking forward to doing it again.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. I was a little nervous when you were like, "Oh, I'd X that question off."
Yeah, swipe
Right.
down to get rid of that one.
You're awesome, Chief. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Jim.
And thank you all for watching this episode of the Hangout Hour. I invite you to come back next time. We'll be live on Wednesday night at 7, and of course on Mondays at 2. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.